Hello, welcome, and how are you?
Hola, mi español es muy despacio y poquito, so we better go in English.
Okay, well, like John is also practicing, so.
Well, I'm not practicing.
Okay, yeah. So we have around half an hour, and we want to celebrate 20 years of the Agile Manifesto. It was 2001, now it's 2021. And you obviously don't need any introduction in the Agile world. However, we have also some very young people in the audience, some people that are new to the topic. So to tell us a little bit about what you have done before the Agile Manifesto.
Okay, well, I've got a little, I had my old backyard here, right? So I'm from the Chicago area, which you met Bob Martin not long ago. So Bob and I have been friends and colleagues for a long time, both in the suburbs of Chicago. But now my wife and I have moved to Florida, and so now I have alligators in my backyard. I wrote this book, Test-Driven Development for Embedded C. And when I saw extreme programming 20 years ago, I thought, oh, this is going to help for people doing embedded systems. And so I pursued that, and I've been involved in the technical side of Agile throughout my knowledge of Agile. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Is that what you were looking for, Fabian?
Yeah, that was like to people have an idea where you were coming from.
Yeah.
Maybe Camilo is here with us in the audience. Camilo, could you maybe copy the link to James's book on Amazon in the chat, so if people want to access it, they can just look for it. So how did you get invited to the event, or were you anyhow involved with the organization, or how did you end up at that event?
Well, I ended up there because Bob Martin said, "Do you want to go to Snowbird for the weekend and be with these other great guys and understand, talk about software with them?" It's like, it's a pretty easy decision because I love to ski, and so yes, I went. Okay, that's the real story behind how I got there. I know none of us really thought anything would happen from that meeting, and it was nice that some important things did happen. At the time, before extreme programming and Agile, there was a lot of emphasis. I like to think of the Watts-Humphreys book as one of the things that we were paying attention to, and it kind of left you with the idea that if there was a better process, you wouldn't have to care about the people. But then Agile kind of looks at it completely different. The people are really important, and I happen to think that both are. So the technical side is really, I think, important to long-term success. And then if you're not humane with people, then you have a huge challenge there.
That's I think one of the major outcomes of the manifesto. It's like probably the first value, right? People and interactions over processes and tools. And I also heard a lot, actually also with John and with Bob, I heard a lot XP. You also mentioned test-driven development. So before the manifesto, were you involved, beside of those two things, were you involved with any other of the now known Agile practices? I don't know, Scrum, Kanban.
Well, not before the Agile Manifesto. Extreme programming, yes. 1999 is when I first started getting involved in extreme programming. And one of my big clients, was doing some embedded systems. So I got it right away to apply it in the world that I've had 20 years of experience in, and find out that, it could really help. But as far as Scrum or Kanban, those weren't on my radar. Bob, having a wider radar, he was seeing some of that stuff out there, and that's how and you would have probably heard from Bob about the invitee list that he worked on, to try to get people that are doing kind of similar things together. And so I was part of the extreme programming contingent, if you will, the group of people that were learning and exploring extreme programming. I was learning from Kent and Ron and Ward, and seeing where we can put that to use.
So like mainly extreme programming background before the manifesto, I understand.
Yeah. Before the manifesto, that would have been, but I wouldn't have seen the other things. So the first time I ever met Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland would have been at Snowbird as well. I had gotten to know Alistair a bit because I did a lot of consulting out in the Salt Lake area, and he and I went skiing together a number of times, and that was a lot of fun. We challenged each other on the slopes. I'm not too bad for a Midwesterner.
Like a common theme, skiing is a common theme.
Yeah.
And so what was your feeling when you left the event? Like, did you expect it to be anything big, or was it just, okay, we just finished 2 days of conference?
Yeah, so we spent 2 half days because we went skiing in the afternoons, just saying.
So
maybe no one else is revealing these secrets, but well, one of the first things that happened in the meeting is Ward said, we're going to need a different name. And what name? Why, Ward? Who wants to be known as a lightweight? Because the title of the meeting we went to was the Lightweight Methods Summit. Well, Summit, it was pretty close to the top of Snowbird, so that was appropriate. And then lightweight, it's like, who wants to be known as a lightweight? How would Agile have done with that as our title? Maybe not as good, but so we didn't really have high expectations that anybody would care. And then I think much to, I think our surprise is that people did care, and lots of people went and showed their support on the website that Ward put together, right? And so I was actually surprised. A few years later, a friend of mine said, "Well, you were part of that. That's great for your consulting career." It's like, really? That matters? It's like, yeah, I guess it's been kind of important.
But it obviously did matter. So you have impact with millions of people, I think.
Yeah.
So
well, just it was maybe the right time for people to hear that message, and I know I was hearing it at that time too. And we tried to find out what we agreed upon, and that's where those 4 bullet points came about. And it's one of the things that the world is kind of missing right now is, instead of focusing on what we disagree on, could we find what we do agree on? That would be a much more enjoyable world to be part of. And, I would like to see more of that in our world. What do we agree on?
I think that's a pretty good point. There would be less conflict and less fighting.
Yeah.
And so how do you see the importance of the Agile Manifesto today?
Well, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this, for that event 20 years ago and some odd weeks, whatever the timing is now. So it was certainly important. And I felt like the first 10 years were a lot of important things were happening. And I kind of feel like there's a lot of people going through the motions now, and that's disappointing. Following kind of the dogma of Scrum. I know you've heard my message before, but this is, and you invited me again, so I guess I get to say something about it. But people are doing the easy half of Agile, and then you might say, well, what's the hard half? As someone did once, I said, well, the technical side. And then they said, no, the hard half is the people half. And I said, oh no, there's 3 halves to Agile. There's the technical, there's the people, and then there's the easy part, just following the rules of Scrum. Right? The other parts are much more difficult, being respectful of people and actually getting your technical excellence and your technical practices, to a state where you can produce less problems for your customers. Those are really hard things. Going through the motions is easy, and I see too much of people, following the dogma and not solving the problems.
And that's a really interesting, and that's also a common theme. I think I heard from John and from Bob also. So let me ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Because we've seen several times, have you seen the Agile Manifesto put out of context or misinterpreted or misapplied? Or?
Well, people yes, yeah, not okay. I'm thinking of your question. Yeah, there's I think engineering has a negative view of Agile. And as evidence, there's some Quora questions that I've been involved in. And the negative one, like why do engineers dislike Agile was one of the Quora questions that I got involved with maybe 4 years ago or something. And it has, the last time I looked, probably 600,000 likes for the negative view of Agile from development engineering, and maybe about 150,000 likes from my view of what Agile was, right? So I would say the people in development that are dissatisfied is much higher than those that are satisfied. And I think, in a way, that's our problem, right? By not helping the engineers understand that, if you're going to start to manage incrementally, what do we need to do to make sure engineering can be successful in incremental management? Because everybody was taught, think about it for a long time, plan everything out, and then go do it, right? We were taught more of a plan-driven approach, and not iterative, incremental growing of a solution, even though in essence, that's the only thing that really ends up working, but people don't view it that way.
Let me ask another follow-up question.
Okay.
So we hear sometimes things like, okay, so let's take one example. So one of the values is responding to change over following a plan.
Yep.
So interpretations that we've heard are, okay, so that means in Agile we don't need to plan, right? So what do you say?
Of course. Yep. And we don't need documentation, and there's all kinds of stuff we don't need, right? I'm putting up my flag there. But no, you need a plan, right? You got to plan stuff out. And that is one of the common ways of reading the Agile Manifesto, is ignoring the things on the left and wondering why no one wants to do the things on the right. I mean, so the Agile Manifesto was, although we find values on the things on the right, we prefer the things on the left, which of course people interpret as in the most extreme way, which is don't do documents, don't have a plan, don't have a contract, right? Don't have a process. No, sorry, you got that wrong.
Thanks a lot, James, and to all of our audience. So now you have it. The signatories from the Agile Manifesto. It doesn't mean you shouldn't plan. It means, yes, a plan is or has value to it.
Well, I think I would defer to somebody like Eisenhower, who says planning is essential, but the plan is, does not survive first contact with the enemy, right? So you've got to have a plan. But once you get down in the trenches, you can't just follow the plan. You've got to follow what is needed. And I worked on a project not long ago for my brother's company, and I identified 5 areas of risk when I first started the project. By the time I was done, I had doubled that number of risks to about 10, right? So as I dug in, I discovered more. There's absolutely no way I could have planned that given my skills. And usually as engineers, we're doing something we've never done before, right? If we'd done it before, it would be easy, but it's usually something we've never done before. So there's discovery and invention that's happening. And there's a natural iteration in that, to think we can just say, well, fully plan this out. You can just pour it out of your brain then into code, right? This is just not practical, except maybe in very simple things that we've done, where we've done them before. So the discovery happens early, and then maybe the repetition stuff happens later when we fill out the skeleton of the walking skeleton of the product, right? We discover the risks with the skeleton, and then we can start to add more functionality once we've managed those risks. So
I think that made sense. It does. It's a great answer, and also I like the quote, or that's actually also a good summary. So no plan survives first contact with the enemy, but that obviously doesn't mean the military doesn't plan. So,
That's right. Nope. We got a plan. You've got to have a plan.
so I like that. And let me also go back to the three parts of agile answer that you gave us.
Yeah.
So another very common question that we get is, how do we become a more agile company? Or how do you, let's say, I don't know if that's the right wording, but how do you implement the Agile Manifesto? How do you implement those values?
Well, part of me wants to say, why do you care? Why do you want to? And then, so after that kind of flippant answer, that's probably a word that maybe your English is a second language, kind of as a short answer. Why would you care? Okay. Trying to elicit the next question is, what are you trying to do? What problems are you trying to solve? I know in the beginning, when we were looking at extreme programming and trying to help companies understand why they might want to change how they do their work, is we wanted to align the change with real problems that they had. And it's pretty easy to find those problems. We're late delivering features. We're delivering features with defects. Our customers are not happy, right? Our people are getting burned out from long hours. These were the core problems, which I think are probably alive and well today. So what I would invite people to do is to seriously try to solve those problems. And that's what pulls, you don't want to do Agile because Agile is cool, or because it's what everybody's doing, or because when you're on the golf course, the other executives are doing Agile. That's not a good reason. You want to do it to solve problems. And so, as an engineer and with, this problem-solving mind, this is what we want to do. A story, oh, you have to do the story the customer gives you. No, the story is as I'll quote Ron Jeffries, an invitation for a conversation. I wonder why you asked for this story. What's the underlying problem behind this thing you want added to your system? Because if you understand the problem, this story might be a solution to it, but there might be a better solution to it as well. And so as people trying to solve problems for our customers, we need to understand what problems our customers are trying to solve. And that is what would drive us towards adopting something that might be under this banner we call Agile.
It's also a great answer. For instance, starting with the why. Like Simon Sinek, understand first why you're doing something, and then look at what you're actually doing.
Yeah, well, so going back to early adopters in extreme programming, if you hear the practices of extreme programming 20 years ago, you're thinking, these people are crazy. But instead, if we turn the table around and say, what problems are you having? And they give us those 4 that I mentioned, which is very common. I didn't make those up. Those ones I've heard pretty much from every client engagement I've had. And then the logic chain is fairly short from this problem that I have to some solution in the network of practices in Agile and extreme programming, right? And so people could say, okay, it sounds kind of strange, but that might work. And so we'll try it. And, you get people to try it, and then they actually start to understand the value.
It's also an iterative approach to implementation, right? Yes.
Well, sure. We used to do, you never knew in the early days of helping people with extreme programming, we never knew what was going to be difficult for a given team. So we just threw everything at them all at once. And, some things would stick right away. One of the things I've noticed in our industry right now is Agile's coming in more through management. And I think Scrum participation, you probably, if you did a poll of all the people attending this, most of them are probably on the business side of the equation. At least that's what happens when I go to a Scrum gathering. I talk to people like, where are the developers? There aren't any there. So oh gosh, I feel like I just lost my train of thought. What was the triggering question there?
And all right, now I get also lost.
Okay, so you forgot to. But so well, at any rate, I was going to make a really good point. Totally lost it.
Okay, well, no worries. But there was one question. This is like in the preparation for this event. This was the number one question we get, like, but by distance. I'm 100% sure you got it a lot, but I have to ask it. So don't get bored. So, would you change anything today at the Agile Manifesto?
Well, I'm sure you've got this answer several times. That's just a moment in time, right? That's a statement made 20 years ago. And of course, it's kind of vague. It doesn't say exactly what you have to do, but those are 4 principles. Could there be some other principles? Could there be some other guiding things? Of course, right? Add amendments to it. I think, I don't know, was it John Kern that was talking about it like, it's kind of like the US Declaration of Independence. You don't go back and change that, but you evolve, what does it mean to have a good work environment? That, of course, will evolve, all right? That piece of, those electrons on a website, they don't need to change, right? It's a moment in history. Somebody could create another one if they thought there was something else to do. That would be certainly okay.
As pretty much in line with John's and Bob's answer to that question, but
yeah, we've probably heard each other answer it before too. But it is a popular question. What would you change? It's like
I have to.
Why change it? What's the problem being solved?
Yeah, right. Certainly, it was an important moment in time, as we know by now, because you have impacted lots of people, and now there's Agile all over the place. So thanks a lot to you and the other people involved in that. Also, we have a few minutes more left on our time box. Would you mind to answer maybe a few questions from our audience?
I'd be happy to.
I'm gonna pick some, and I'm gonna read them to you. Maybe one little poll for our audience. Meanwhile, we want to have an idea of like how is our audience related to Agile, to Scrum, and to our topics here. So I'm gonna launch a little poll while I read out the questions to James. If you mind answering, that would be interesting. So here is the first question from Thomas. When drafting the manifesto, did you ever believe that the values and frameworks stated could be applied outside of the IT industry?
Outside of software?
Yeah, I guess that's what it means.
Yeah, hadn't really, that's not what we were thinking about at the time, but certainly I would think these ideas are applicable. I do apply them outside of software development. I was, the concept of velocity. I was plowing my driveway years ago, back in Illinois, where I used to live. The winter was like this. And so I would plow the driveway. We'd have, this much snow in the driveway. And so I would time, how long does it take me to do, 2 stripes of snow remove, 2 mounds. And I would time that, and I would kind of calculate in my head how many more of those I need to do, and see if we're going to be able to get out of the driveway on time, or if I need to go in and give the bad news that we're going to be late, right? So certainly iterative and incremental thinking influences way more than software. It influences the way I solve problems. I was changing a light switch the other day in my home, and before putting the panel back on, I thought, well, why don't I test to make sure that I did that light switch right? And of course, I blew a fuse. I'm only an electrical engineer, can't change a light switch, but I can change a light switch. But so iterative and incremental. Yeah, do this careful, and being careful is the fast way.
Okay, great, thank you. And there's another question, an anonymous question. What do you think about the word hybrid in terms of a mix between waterfall and agile?
Hybrid?
Yeah.
Well, probably there's some reality of, we need certain environments probably can survive fine with continuous delivery and work on the most important thing next. You have to balance that with a longer term view of what what your overall goal is, because if the thing you work on in a given iteration is the thing that the product owner thought of while they're running late to the meeting, it's probably not going to be the most important work that needs to be done. So there's this need for this longer term view. And I think maybe this is a balance. We have a vision of where we're going and a practical way to get there. So I would like to think that, we do need aspects of both of those, especially different kinds of environments need different things. For instance, I find myself in concurrent hardware and software development, in embedded systems. So there's going to be software and hardware, and we have to plan integration points. And if we're not ready when the hardware comes in, we're wasting valuable time. Now, that means choosing what you're going to work on carefully so that you can meet those important dates. Dates are critical, right? I want to know why they're critical. And we don't want to have quote unquote motivational dates, right? Those often are, not so helpful. We want to have dates that have good, good reason for them.
Okay, thank you. I think we have still 3 minutes left. So here's a question, but let me ask you something first in order to read the question. So somebody here makes a reference to Tom Gibbs' critics to the Agile Manifesto principles and values. Have you heard of that?
Well, I know Tom Gibb, and could you repeat one more time?
The question is, what do you think about Tom Gibbs' critics to Agile Manifesto principles and values?
Well, I got to say, I can't recall what they are right now. I know I've spent long hours talking to Tom about different things now. He has a very engineering focus on what his perspective is, that we should have MTBF and MTTR kind of metrics and things. If we were going to really call ourselves engineers, we need to start having some of those ideas and metrics. So Tom he's got a lot of good stuff to offer. So I don't have anything negative to say about his contributions. I'm just not aware of what his critiques of Agile are. We've always had constructive conversations.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, Scrum and Agile, is it the same? What's the difference if not?
Wait, say one more time.
Scrum and Agile, is that the same? And if it's not the same, what's the difference?
Well, Scrum, Scrum is a specific flavor, right? So back in the 80s, we were learning about communicating in levels of abstraction. And, if you think of the highest level of abstraction, that's Agile. And Scrum is a specific instance of Agile, or could be a specific instance of Agile. Here's the big if in Scrum, to me, from my perspective. If the retrospectives are meaningful and you're really doing problem solving, then Scrum turns into continuous improvement and things like, and if you fold in, if you have problems with engineering incrementally and you fold in solutions to incremental engineering into that, right? So as your retrospectives actually solve serious problems, then I would say it's the essence of Agile. If you're doing a retrospective because it's on the list of things to do and you don't ever fix anything and you keep living with bugs and keep living with burnout and keep living with, whatever the problems are, then you're doing Scrum. I'm sorry. That's not as valuable as becoming Agile, if you will.
I think that's a great answer to close. So James, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me and to our audience here in Latin America.